Hi there, welcome to Victim to Victor, the podcast dedicated to empowering abuse survivors and inspiring healing, hope, and positive change. I'm Verma, a published author, and in every episode, I'll sit down with a guest and embark on an insightful conversation about trauma, as well as practical strategies to start the healing process. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy the show. And here is Mr. Brad Watts, all the way from America. How are you, Brad?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. So it's about 9:15 here now in the evening, but hey, I'm raring to go. I've had my cup of tea. But no, thank you so much for coming to see me today on this show. And I know that, we've got some real important subjects to talk about. And you've wrote a best-selling book called Sibling Sexual Abuse, a guide to confronting America's silent epidemic. It'd be great to find out more about the motives behind writing this book. And if you could just please tell us about yourself as well. Who is Brad?
Yeah. Well, first, I really appreciate you having me on and the opportunity to talk about this. And so, yeah, I mean, as far as hitting the motives for the book, I was working, obviously, in America at a residential treatment facility when I finished graduate school. And so I started working, they asked me to start working with the adolescent sex offender population. So I remember thinking, as a lot of people do, I was kind of weirded out by that. I was like, well, I don't know if I can work with that population.
Yeah.
So I had moved up to Virginia, where I was at, and thought I'd give it a shot. I was like, okay. I remember my professor at grad school had worked with that population and it spoke very highly of it. And then at the time, I was like,
wow,
thinking, oh, there's no way I can't work with them. But I told him I'd give it a shot. And what I found is I just really grew to love it and love that work, because just understanding all the dynamics that happened with kids and how much different adolescent offenders are than adult offenders. People that we typically think of, like Larry Nassar. You go back a few years, particularly in America, Jerry Sandusky was a big case over there, Penn State coach. And so just really seeing that they responded much, much better to treatment. But and so what I noticed was there were these patterns that would happen. And I was like, holy cow, so many of these cases tend to happen where adolescents are offending on, people within their home. We call it siblings, but it's really child-on-child sexual abuse. So it could be step siblings, could be, mom has a boyfriend who has kids in the home, could be cousins. So we use that term kind of loosely and all-encompassing. Wow. But just notice these patterns. And so I created a really kind of rough, what I call family therapy treatment manual. And so I took that across a couple states in the United States to present at these conferences. Okay. And so I didn't think anybody would show up. I remember I'm meeting with one of my professors beforehand. I was like, I expect like 5 people to be here, and the room would be full. And so that surprised me. And then we would talk afterwards, and these people would share their experiences. And I was just like, wow, this is really cutting across all kinds of demographics. Is much more common than what I thought. And so I came back to trying to put myself in the place of parents. Can I imagine getting news, that I have one child who has sexually abused the other one? Because, I'd always kind of grown up, you understand, the way we look at adult offenders, and parents and families would focus all their anger, and all the complex emotions that those parents go through with that towards that individual. But the difficulty of, I adore my kid and I adore my other kid, as only a parent can love someone, and then you're just really torn apart from that. Not to mention what is this, the survivors are going through in that. So I went online and was looking, I was like, there is nothing out there for parents as kind of a guide to walk them through. So originally the book was intended for parents to walk people through, but it's really kind of a big snapshot of the process of what someone could expect. But not the other audience for the book is really for all of us, and it's a call to action. I call it the silent epidemic. I really mistitled the book, because I said America's silent epidemic. As people that are involved, this is the world's silent epidemic, whether it's in the UK, whether it's Australia, Canada, lots of people I've talked to all over the world. And this is something that is for humanity, for us, for our children, for our families, for survivors. We need to talk about and do all that we can to support them, because we need to hear their stories in order to really be able to tackle this problem.
Absolutely. And how long have you been a counsellor now?
7 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. And during that time, so would you say a lot of your cases have been children?
Yeah, really? Most definitely. And yeah, a lot of cases of sibling sexual abuse. And yeah, definitely.
Oh, bless. Oh, goodness. I know, because we talk about the COVID lockdown and the impact that that's had on abuse in general, really, domestic abuse, sexual abuse. Have you noticed an impact on children coming to see you during this time?
Yeah, I mean, COVID's been hard on everybody, right? And definitely, during the time that it's been, has led to an increase in, like you said, that kind of abuse going on. Okay.
So how is it different to normal sexual curiosity?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, and so that's one of the big problems, is identifying, what's the difference. And kind of in my work, my opinion, and kind of the research that we see is trying to draw the line. What's the difference? How do we know? Well, one of the big elements of that is, what is the motivation? Right. So with sexual curiosity, if someone's exploring, and that's normal, that's healthy, playing doctor, those kinds of things, it's going to happen, once, maybe twice. It's typically going to happen between around same age peers, and the motivation is curiosity. It isn't sexual gratification. So for example, I use an example in the book. If you've got a 12-year-old exploring the body of a 6-year-old, well, that's clearly abuse. One of the things is the age difference. So they're going to be close in age, but a bigger factor even than age difference, because we see a lot of it happen between people that are really close in age. It's coercion, it's manipulation, it's threats, it's force, it's shame, and they really exploit that relationship. Because think about the role of a big brother when we think about a healthy sibling relationship. Well, it's my protector, right? And so they're exploiting that relationship for sexual abuse gratification. And then it also makes it harder for these survivors to come and disclose, because of the effects that it could take on the family. It could mean more abuse. What will happen? Well, no one will believe me. So some of those themes that we see.
And grooming, I guess, is another term to apply to this as well. And again, grooming, comes up a lot. And it was only recently I had another guest on, and we were actually discussing Michael Jackson. I was in kind of disbelief still about what happened. I think a lot of us, who were his fans, we just wanted to pretend that it never really happened. But then I started to watch more YouTube videos, and it's true, right? It's so true. He did it.
Yeah. Grooming is huge that we see in it, and it's so unfortunate. And we see it through just so many different ways. It can be things like sexual talk. It can be showing pornography. It can be, for example, you don't, a brother saying, you don't want me to get in trouble. You're going to be the reason we break up the family. It's, hey, I'll give you some of your favorite candy. And it can be, variety of things, as you know.
It is, yeah. And so why would you say it's considered a silent epidemic?
because we don't talk about it. I mean, think about it in our worldwide public discourse, most things are on the table nowadays.
Yeah.
That we can talk about and have conversations. But sibling sexual abuse, what I saw is we just don't talk about it. And if we would talk about it more and open up a dialogue, we would see a great deal of improvement. And survivors would feel safe, they'd feel empowered, they'd feel valued, and they don't feel that way because we're not talking about it. For example, think about, okay, if I get a cancer diagnosis, I don't know, what do I do? It was just so dumbfounding, and you're in grief and all this and shock. So I could go on Facebook or social media to my friends and say, hey, where can I go? Who's a good doctor to go see? And people would give me feedback. Well, no one's going to go on Facebook or social media, or, pick your platform and say, hey, I just found out my son just sexually abused my daughter, or, so what do I do? There isn't that. So that sense of shame and silence around it allows a lot of it to keep going because parents don't and caregivers don't do anything about it, and they're left to just suffer in silence, even if they do try and do things about it. So it's such a heavy burden to carry for everyone involved, particularly the survivors.
It is, but then I just think about the kids as well, because I guess it's difficult for them to communicate this because a lot of them don't even realize that it's bad, for starters, and secondly, how they probably haven't even got the vocabulary to even express what's been going on to them, because they can't say, oh, I've been sexually abused. How is it that they can communicate? And what's the kind of youngest child that you've had come to you?
Well, what we can look at just in general, and I'll speak to the research on that, is so the average age of offenders, according on the research that you see in the studies, is around 15. The average age of survivors is around, when this has happened, 6 to 7. So your point is absolutely correct. It's like, well, how do you say that? And think about a 6 or 7-year-old brain and the way you're seeing it. And according to one study that I was recently reading over the last week, is the average time that people were abused in that study was 4.5 years. Think about that.
Wow.
2 to 3 acts of sexual abuse, let's say a month, over a 4-year period. The trauma that goes on. And so, it's hard for these kids to come and disclose. And we see, most don't disclose at all. And when they do, a lot of times they're older. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's a really bad reaction. They're not believed. It's minimized. You're making it up. Or we see things like, victim shaming that we see in other forms of abuse. So it's just a really, really difficult epidemic, like what we talk about.
It is. And we'll go on to kind of the education that, we can obviously have as parents, and education that we can give to our children as well. But just want to know, first of all, how widespread the problem actually is right now. Yeah,
we really don't know, because of the lack of research. We don't have the long studies, the longitudinal studies to be able to document all of that. And so what we do know about it is, several studies have found that it's up to 5 times more common than any other form of childhood sexual abuse. So in the past, we've thought, father or stepfather sexual abuse on the child was the most common. Well, sibling sexual abuse is, according to some studies, as much as 5 times more common than that. So we do know that it's extremely common. We don't, unfortunately, have better numbers to be able to realize that, because a lot of cases of sibling sexual abuse that we do know of, they're kind of the worst ones that reach the level within law enforcement. But so many don't. So many survivors don't tell anybody, and so we really need better research done. And we have a lot of male survivors that won't be a part of studies, for different things. And so we have a lot fewer of them coming forward to participate.
Okay, because that in India, Modi has set a law saying that as long as the child is fully clothed, it's not classed as sexual abuse. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, no. that doesn't matter, and so, it's things like that, laws that are not helpful as far as, again, problems with defining it.
Yeah.
And really knowing and understanding. We have problems even in the clinical world, here in the States, and certainly, in other countries as well, as far as so many clinicians have not even considered it abuse in the past. And so think about that. You have people that are therapists, that are clinicians, psychologists, not taking it seriously enough, much less as a society, not giving it the serious discussion and treatment the way it should be treated, which is one of the most absolutely difficult, traumatic experiences that anyone can go through.
It is, yeah. And so what is it? What would it take for somebody to actually go into the register? So what's the kind of limit that they're allowed in America right now?
Oh, as far as to be registered as like a sex offender?
Yeah.
So, well, it all depends, particularly with adolescents. We typically don't see that. It can happen in really severe cases, and it's kind of a state by state, depending on the state law with how that goes.
Yeah.
But, the thing with, we shy away from that because of the adolescent brain, because it's not fully developed until their mid-20s. And what we see really positive responses to treatment from youth. So, for example, if a youth that sexually offends, get into a specialized treatment program that's designed to tailor to those who've sexually acted out, there's a 95 to 98%, in essence, success rate that they won't go back and be arrested and offend again. So it's really, really high. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed the work so much, is seeing families and individuals be able to change, because it's incumbent upon us to want to rehabilitate our youth. Because think about it, they go on and continue on that road and become, reach pedophile kind of state years later. I mean, think about all the damage that it does to the community, the world. So the more we can rehabilitate, the better.
Fantastic. Yeah. And so what signs can the parents and adults look for, if they are currently dealing with a child who, maybe showing signs of, abuse?
That's a great question. Changes in behavior.
Okay.
A big one, particularly like within the home. Let's say it's somebody within the home. Are they acting differently when they're around, certain siblings? Do you see avoidance? Do you see, well, there's just a ton of different signs, but, is there like cutting, self-harm, depression, crying, a lot of crying, nightmares, difficulty eating. I mean, you name it, lots of different of those behavioral kinds of changes, just really to clue in and look out for. And parents, should, really just ask some tough questions and just be direct with kids, ask open-ended questions, be willing to listen. One of the best things I feel like that they can do is just really fostering that kind of relationship with their kids, where the kids feel safe, that they can tell them anything. Take a deep breath, and ask what's going on. And a lot of times that obviously they won't want to tell, but just to be open in that safe space, and then, believe.
Yeah, we talk about safe space a lot when it comes to trauma therapy. So important. And I guess with a child, it can just be asking simple questions like, has anybody touched your pee-pee?
Yeah.
Simple as that, right? Okay. That's quite, I think that's important for all parents to maybe start addressing that, because I think there's a lot more awareness now, and parents are a lot more alert with their kids. So and I think what we're doing as well, like with your book, it's just benefiting the world tremendously. So keep it up. Right. So where can parents turn to for help?
Well, for one, getting therapists involved, particularly trauma specific therapists. So just so you're not, keeping it to yourself. Okay. We want to open the doors with that. And I tell people, get a professional involved. There are people like me, that handle this. ATSA, the Association for Treatment of Sexual Abusers, is one. very specialized group too. But just get involved. Ask questions. Don't be afraid. Obviously, I have people email me all the time. You have questions. I'm always happy to answer those, whatever those may be, and try and help people in whatever way that I can. But getting mental health professionals involved is really key, because what happens is when you get a disclosure of sibling sexual abuse, the whole family needs to be in treatment. Because it's
really?
such a difficult situation. And getting help for the survivor, as parents, as caregivers, it's important that they're getting involved in treatment, because it's so traumatic too.
It is. What would be the immediate response? So let's just say a child has just disclosed what may have happened to them. What would the parent do then?
Well, I would, one, talk to them, and allow them to talk as much as they're able to talk, get as much information as possible, and then go act on it. So, for example, they could talk to the other sibling, if they deny it, whatever the case may be. They can call a mental health professional, and get them involved, but take action. Like in the States, sometimes it's calling, social services, gets involved as well, and that they can help guide that. But really just to find out information, what did abuse look like, how long was it going on, those kinds of things.
Okay, that's good to know. So, when it comes to adult offenders, we've done a lot of work on this ourselves. Like the main motive for adult offenders is power and control, right? When it comes to abuse and rape. But what is it with adolescents? That's what I don't understand. What is their motive?
Yeah, it becomes a lot of different things. Again, power and control, are right there near the top.
They're so young, right?
Exactly. And so what we see is, in a lot of cases, physical abuse, their own sexual abuse, any kind of child maltreatment, all increase the risk for them to act out in these kinds of ways. As I write in the book, pornography is a huge, huge deal.
Wow.
As far as influencing them. And so think about it. So according to some research, that we see, the average age that someone will seek out porn for the first time is around 10 years old. So think about the brain development of a child. They're looking at porn, and particularly, the way porn is now, very rough, very violent. And so they're taking that and thinking, it starts with curiosity. And they're thinking, this is how sex and relationships are.
Okay, yeah.
And then a lot of times they're thinking, well, who can I do this with? And well, there's nobody I can think of. So you know what? I can have my little brother, little sister, I can make them do it. Right. No one will be able to disclose that. I can keep that a secret. So they're not to the point where they're going to go try and grab somebody and pull them in the bathroom at school, but they're going to do that in that controlled environment where maybe they know, hey, I know mom goes downstairs and watches TV at 7 o'clock every night. And then I can go in here and act out what I want. So that's why addressing, kids, sexual media and pornography is so key, because they don't have the life experiences that we did, as adults. And so that's what they're thinking. And we see a lot of it starts with curiosity, because as parents, we're not talking about sex and educating them as we should. And so, well, who's then doing it? Pornography, kids at school, other people. And that's where we really run into some problems.
So I guess it's curiosity. That's what it boils down to. Curious kids. Oh, honestly, you just think, well, why can't they just be curious about things like science and, the world and...
Yeah, and it's important to remember, look, every kid, as we know, that looks at porn, that doesn't mean he's going to sexually offend, but it does put them in a higher risk category when they have other these risk factors going on as well.
For sure, absolutely. So do you feel that there is hope for the future? Oh,
I do. And like I said, what we see kids that get into treatment, they have high success rates. When you talk about offenders being able to rehabilitate, obviously the priority is our survivors. What we need to do, and with the book, is to focus our attention on talking about it, talking about how we need to believe and invite create situations where survivors can share their experiences.
Yeah.
But we've got to break down this taboo where we don't talk about it, where people don't know what to do, they don't know how to recognize it, or they're confused thinking, well, that's just sexual play, that's just sexual curiosity, when it's not. It's abuse, and it's this one of the, in my opinion, probably the most severe kind of abuse. When you talk about within the family and those dynamics, when a family is supposed to protect, that's your safe spot, and then think about these kids losing it.
Wow.
And then every time they sit down to dinner, every time they're there, they're seeing their abuser, that nothing has been done, or that the family has taken his side and they said, you know what, we don't believe you. And so we need to talk about it. It's incumbent upon all of us to act and to talk about it and break down these stigmas and these walls and let survivors know that they will be believed, and that we will support them.
Yeah. And so how can families heal?
Well, every situation's different.
Okay.
And so one of the biggest ways is just simply, one, like I talked about, putting the survivor first, help supporting them, putting your energy there, sending the offender, getting him the kind of treatment that he needs, and then working forward. Every situation's different. There's some families that they won't be able to heal, quite frankly, but a lot of them can and do. But it can take a long time. But it's, confessing where we went wrong, believing. The more parents can just believe the initial disclosure, the better results are. Where we get into more severe kinds of problems is when kids aren't believed, when they disclose. But fostering that kind of environment where parents are clued in, on top of things and doing all that they can. But as we know, sibling sexual abuse happens in low functioning families. It happens in high functioning families. Yeah, so it's just, it happens, but we need to do everything we can to root it out. And when it does happen, families can heal, but it's moving forward, getting treatment, offering that support, sharing responsibility, taking responsibility for what's been done, and creating an environment of safety where that would never happen again.
Yeah. And I guess when it comes to believing your child as well, I understand that, a lot of parents might think that the child might be craving attention, and so they might be making it up. What are the other kind of factors which might go behind a parent not believing their child?
Well, think about it. You think about the consequences of it. Well, what does this mean for my family? Yeah. Well, does this mean Johnny is going away? It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, what's the rest of the family going to think? What are my friends going to think? It's about me instead of, and naturally so, but it needs to be about the kids and about the survivor, and also about the offender and getting them treatment, getting them the help that they need. But there's a lot of factors in that parents, they're in such shock and disbelief when they get a disclosure, they don't want to believe it. And you see a lot of cases where they'll walk out of the room, or whether they'll just say, hey, don't ever do this again. Well, they need help. They need professional help. Everybody does in the family when that happens.
They do, yeah. And so do you see offenders as well as the victim?
I spent several years seeing offenders, and now primarily I treat, survivors. But yeah, I did a lot of work with offenders.
Oh, wow. Well, I was going to ask, like, what kind of work you're currently doing, with your the victims, or is it safe to call them victims? I only say that because of my show, and also the kind of skills that you apply to help them to heal. I think that would be quite useful for my listeners to know. Yeah,
it's just really important. There's a variety of things that we do, as far as but with trauma, just like everybody, the therapists do, different techniques, but really it's important, as they come in and work through the trauma that they've been, and then there's a variety of things that we do. I find trauma narratives are really important, that we do at different points, but it's just really where people are at. I know EMDR is a really, great technique to use, with trauma as well, and a lot of research and success behind it. But it's kind of based on the individual and where they're at, because that, like I said, we do see common patterns with sibling sexual abuse, but every situation has its individual factors.
Yeah.
It's a little bit, as
How
far
about,
as the needs.
how about when it comes to offenders? So is a lot of that training based upon trying to understand why they feel the way that they do towards their sibling?
Yeah, and probably even more so than that is the importance of them taking responsibility and accountability for what they've done.
Yeah.
Not trying to blame it anywhere else. Like I said, there are other factors that create risk factors, but nothing makes them turn around and sexually abuse. That is their choice. That is their responsibility. Like I said, there's thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that have been sexually abused, that they don't turn around and abuse somebody else. So it's really understanding those factors, gearing treatment individually again towards each situation to really, have them develop their level of empathy, to really understand as much as they can. Certainly they can't do that fully, but as much as they can, to look at the abuse and what's been done from their siblings' shoes and perspectives. And that's hard work. And so what happens, we see a lot of times, is that they just didn't think about how they were affecting not only their sibling, but their whole family. A lot of intensive work, like I said, looking at pornography, how that's used, safety planning, developing, like I said, areas of skills where they've had deficits in the past, and really, working in those regards.
Oh, thank you. No, that's brilliant. Wow. So where can my listeners find you?
Yeah, my website is bradwattslpc.com. They can email me at bradwattslpc@gmail.com, and I'm on Twitter at bradwattslpc. So love hearing from people and love hearing people's perspectives, and just trying to help in whatever way I can.
Oh, perfect. That's great. And I'll be adding all the links once you send them over, as well as a link to your book as well. Is that available on Amazon?
It is. It's on Amazon. That's right.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. So that would be fantastic for my listeners to be able to contact you if they do have any questions, especially if it's a parent who may be looking out for their child, or if their child's already undergone some abuse and they might be struggling with how to deal with that. So please do reach out, my listeners, and I hope you did enjoy this. Well, not enjoy, but I hope you found it useful. It's not really a topic of discussion to enjoy.
Right.
I take that back. But it has been very valuable, just understanding about sibling sexual abuse, and just the fact that it is an epidemic out there, and we really need to understand more about it, and to just create that space for our kids and any other survivor to be able to speak about it. Communication is key, and I think it's been evident during our discussion today that we really need to talk more, and this is why I have this platform, to obviously raise this awareness and to provide a platform for survivors to also share their journeys of inspiration. So thank you so much, Brad. You've been amazing today. And
thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time and giving the platform for sibling sexual abuse. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It's brilliant. So I will be back again in my next episode, listeners. Please do take care in the meantime. Stay safe and look out for your children, and stay blessed. Take care. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Victim to Victor. Subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes, and be sure to follow the podcast on socials to keep updated on what's next, and share Victim to Victor with family and friends to help grow the community and spread the positive healing energy. You may also wish to join me on the path to self-discovery and sign up to my 12-week self-empowerment plan, which will be linked below.